Welcome everybody to the 2024 first session of the ITU Digital Transformation Dialogues. My name is Cristina Bueti and I am happy to be the Master of Ceremony for today's session. So before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to discuss the session format. Today's session is part of a larger series by the ITU called Digital Transformation Dialogues. In its new form, the Digital Transformation Dialogues brings experts from a range of industries and specialties together for webinars, fireside chats, such as this one, and Ask the Expert sessions. Today's event will discuss ways digital transformation enables innovation in the medical field, but we also have many other exciting upcoming events. Our ITU colleagues will provide a link in the chat for future sessions, and we encourage you to remain part of this conversation moving forward. So before I introduce our moderator and speaker, I'd like to highlight a few logistical items. Firstly, all questions from the audience will be taken during the Q&A session after the fireside chat. If you have any questions you would like to submit, please do so by typing in the Q&A window. The Q&A icon can be seen at the bottom of your screen. In addition to your question, please also indicate the city and country you're connecting from. Finally, the fireside chat is being recorded, and the recording will be made available on the event website. Thank you very much for your time and attendance. And with that, I will pass the floor to Ms. Christina Yan Zhang, CEO of the Metaverse Institute, to introduce today's topic and our distinguished speaker. Professor.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Christina. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Christina Yan Zhang, CEO of the Metaverse Institute, which works with international organizations, governments, investors, and corporations to leverage emerging technology to positive change. It is my honor to be the moderator for today's session. In today's session, we will be speaking to a very distinguished surgeon of our time, and we'll be discussing the evolving landscape of healthcare and the convergence of digital transformations and surgical advances. Through seamless integration of cutting-edge technologies, medical professionals are now equipped with powerful tools that can enhance diagnostic treatments much better. So let me introduce our distinguished speaker, Professor Owase Jeelani. Professor, would you like to turn on your camera first? He is a world-renowned pediatric neurosurgeon, known for his pathbreaking work on separating 6 conjoined twins with fused heads between 2011 and 2023. So Professor Jeelani is also an educator, an investor, an entrepreneur, and a philanthropist. So with that, let's start conversation. Thank you. So Professor, your work separating the conjoined twins with fused heads is truly groundbreaking. So how did you get started?
Christina, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. It's an honor to be here speaking at this forum. I think the United Nations and the ITU webinars are ideally placed to have these conversations, these webinars, so the conversation can be global on issues that affect all of us and see how best to arrive at an equitable progress that applies to all of us. For the work that I'm known for, that you're talking about, conjoined twins, it was not planned. I never set out to be a global expert in conjoined twin separation. It was responding to a demand. So these cases are very rare. The incidence is around 1 in 2.5 million live births. So there is no one country that has a large number of cases to develop the knowledge and the expertise that you need to do these cases successfully. At my hospital, we had undertaken 2 separations previously in 2006 and 2011. So we had some experience, just 2 cases, but you know, on the global scene. That was one of the large experience already at that stage with the two cases. We then had a number of sets referred to us after 2011, but for logistical reasons and various other issues, the separation did not take place. And then in 2018, we were referred this one set of twin girls from Pakistan. Again, we assessed the case. We undertook Zoom consultations with the family, with the local doctors who had asked for our help. And we felt that technically we had the expertise and the knowledge to do the separation. The difficulty then again was logistics, because they came from another country, and to bring them to the UK, there was lots of expenses and logistics involved. So it took quite a bit of time to get the logistics put into place. And over the time, the medical team, developed a bond with these kids because we saw them grow. They were referred when they were a few months of age. We were trying to get the logistics together for almost, well, over a year. And the girls had lost their father just before they were born. So it was a mother in a remote part of the world, really looking for help for her daughters. And finally, we managed to get the logistics together. What we did was we set up a charity called Gemini Untwined that helped us put it all together, and we got the girls to the UK and undertake their treatment. What we were not expecting at that point was the number of referrals we have received since, and the number of cases we have advised on and undertaken the separation of. So there was clearly a global need for something like this, where these cases are rare and nobody really has the knowledge. So we needed almost an entity that was a global knowledge repository where we could collect the knowledge of how best to deal with these cases and then share these knowledge with a global audience. And that is what the charity ended up doing. And we've now undertaken 7 separation surgeries and are involved with a number of other sets of twins as we speak.
That's wonderful. And you mentioned that you need to set up a charity to do this operation. Does that mean the cost of treating those conjoined twins are quite high?
These are very complex cases, and because what we're talking about are 2 children that are joined together. But what's really conjoined is, they share skin, they share bone, but on the inside, they have brains that are opposed to each other, often with connections crossing the 2 brains. They have blood vessels that go from one twin to the other. So it's a very complex anatomical configuration. And what we've found is, with our experience, what we found is that the safest way to do these surgeries is not to do one big operation, but really to do multiple smaller operations. And it's almost using nature to help you. So you do a small operation, then you wait for a few weeks and let the healing take place. Because again, remember, these are little children. These are babies, a few months of age. So big operations means big blood loss and cardiovascular stress. So if you do smaller operations and then in between times allow nature to heal the bits that you've done, and think of it doing a quarter at a time. So you do 4 operations rather than one big operation. But what that means is they have to stay in the hospital for a 6-month period, typically in intensive care and surgery, and the whole medical bill can run up to £1 million, at least here in the UK. So they are quite expensive logistics, but the way to really think about this is cutting edge medicine. This is treatment that was not available before. And the positive externalities, the benefit to a lot of the other surgeries that we do is huge. As we'll see, we've developed a lot of tech to help do this super complex work. And that tech is then used for many, many other surgeries that we do.
Can you give me some examples? So through performing this quite complicated surgery, what kind of, tech you can develop to treat other, like similar or less complicated procedures?
Sure. So one of the challenges with these cases is the anatomy, as I explained, is quite complex, with the brains intertwined and the blood vessels intertwined. And traditionally, we look at the anatomy and we understand the anatomy in 2 dimensions. And what surgeons have been doing forever, ever since they were surgeons, is taking these 2D images that they see in books and 2D images that they see on screens and try and make it 3D in your head. That's what surgeons have to do, because we work in 3D, but we receive knowledge in 2D. So we had a very rudimentary augmented reality platform. I did not know much about augmented reality 7, 8 years ago, but what we needed was, we had this really complex problem, and we said, okay, let's look at the tools. All these tech platforms that we're going to talk about, they're just tools. they're not the final. So what you have to do is you've got a problem and you look for the best tools you have around you to help with that problem that improves the chances of undertaking that task successfully. And for us at that time, it was clear that what augmented reality had to offer was very useful in terms of converting this 2D data sets into 3D, really enable us to understand much better how the brains are twisted around each other, how the blood vessels are twisted. And then often with these operations, you have to discuss this amongst many different clinicians, surgeons, other teams. And for the Brazilian twins, between surgeons and medical teams in 2 different countries. So that's really where augmented reality came into being, where we managed to get people into the same virtual theater. We rehearsed these operations and the various techniques. So a huge advance. Now that we've done it and we have our own virtual reality platform, it's become much more common use in our hospital and many other hospitals now, is where we use it for more routine surgeries, we use it for teaching, training, but it was really kind of to develop it for something so complex as that, that's now trickled down. That's how it's happened at our institution.
That's wonderful. So normally, how long do you need to do this kind of training or rehearsal beforehand to perform the surgery in the end?
For each set of twins, we will probably, the planning and the discussions and things usually take quite a few months. It can be up to 6 months of just going through these scenarios again and again, because one of the things, because as I said, there are multiple different parts that are connected. So you have to take multiple steps of the surgery. You know, which parts do you separate in the first surgery? Which blood vessels do you deal with? Which do you not deal with? What do you do at the next stage? What do you do at the next stage? So it's quite a complex. I often say it's almost like 100 things, 100 ducks, and you have to put all the ducks in the right order to increase the probability of a successful outcome, right? So that planning, the rehearsal is a key part of it. And to have the tools that we've used to do that rehearsal between team members in different continents has been very, very, very useful in terms of increasing the chances of getting a good outcome.
And during that process, every single steps out of these hundreds of steps, they all need to be accurate, or else there will be problems with the surgery. Is that correct?
It's yes. So every time there is an issue, it multiplies towards the end. And so every step doesn't have to be absolutely 100%, but the more things run to plan, and if there are alterations you make them in a timely fashion, that increases the probability. Everything we deal with in surgery and healthcare is a matter of probability. I suppose everything in life is probability. So the probability of a good outcome is best when you have planned it as best as you can, and then the execution is as close to the plan as possible. That just gives you the best probability of a good outcome. There are times, of course, when things happen that you've not planned for, and then you need to pick that up as it happens and be able to adjust your plan to that. So have a robust plan, have scenarios, if this happens, we do this. If this happens, we do this. Be as prepared as you can, but then be ready to change those plans as needed when you're doing the procedures.
I see. So during those decades of operating, separating the twins, what's like the most challenging surgery, emergency you ever experienced?
Oh, that's a difficult question. I mean, all the cases have brought challenges, their own challenges with them. I mean, it's difficult to. There are many scenarios I can think of that have been challenging. The most recent one that we did in Brazil, just a few months ago, one of the twins was not expected to survive the separation because he was born with a very weak heart and his kidneys weren't working. So they were born at 36 weeks gestation, and we had to undertake an emergency separation when they were less than 2 kilograms in weight. I mean, really tiny babies. And we knew that once we do the separation, then one of the twins was not going to survive because his kidneys and heart weren't capable of kind of maintaining life. But what was happening was, as they were connected, we were going to lose both twins if we kept them connected. So I had to fly over to Brazil. We didn't have as much time to plan, but we had our previous experience with the previous sets. And then we undertook the separation, and one twin survived and did very well. We lost the other twin. So from an emotional point of view, that was very hard. I mean, we were expecting it would happen, but when it happened, it was very difficult. Much more difficult than I had expected it would be for me. And in our 7 sets of twins that we've separated, this was the first child that we'd lost. So, from an emotional point of view, that's probably the hardest case. From a technical perspective, I think it was the third one, the Pakistani twins, where in one particular operation we encountered a lot of bleeding, and in retrospect, we should have stopped and not continued that particular operation, but we did not make the right call, and the outcome was compromised because of that. So, yeah, it's difficult to pick one thing, but there's been challenges all along.
I see. And I also hear that in some of the surgery, you have to continue to do the operation up to 12 hours in one go. So
Oh,
how did you manage that? Because I mean, even people training to do marathon, they're probably running for like no more than 4 hours maximum. So 12 hours, doing
yes.
very precision-based surgery, that sounds mission impossible.
Yes and no. For me, the human potential is limitless. Um, I'll tell you. I'll tell you what happened yesterday. I lost my mother a few days ago, and we had a few days, and then yesterday, my daughter, who's 15, um, she decided to go to school. So I was driving her to school, and she was very close to her grandmother, and she said, Papa, I think I'm going to have a yuck day. And my answer was, yeah, if you want to have a yuck day, absolutely. That's, you're right. You're very, you've lost your grandmother. You can have a yuck day. Or if you don't want to have a yuck day, then you tell yourself, no, I don't want to have a yuck day, and I want to have a better day, or I want to have, and then you tell your mind the kind of day you want to have, and then you just make that happen. And this potential, everybody has that potential. So it's a case of you train yourself to almost have the future that you want. We're talking about one day here, but with these surgeries that you're asking me, if your focus is that you have to save those children, and you know that what's needed of you, I mean, you said, well, it's, one of the operations went on for 27 hours with very little breaks. And at that time, you're just so focused on the kids that everything else just disappears. You lose perspective of time, you lose perspective of everything. But what does happen is that once you finish those 27 hours and the kids are stable and they're sort of out of the operating theater, you crash physically, mentally, emotionally. You're like, your tank is empty, you're on zero, but you keep yourself going. That's the mental focus. And that is something that I suppose being a surgeon and, is something that you train yourself to do over many, many years. So when I picked up my daughter yesterday from school at the end of her school day, and I said, "How was your day?" and she said, "Better than I expected." So she had decided that she didn't want to have a yuck yuck day, and she made herself have a slightly better day. And this is human potential. I would say it's limitless. We just need to be able to sort of remind ourselves and be able to tap into it.
Wow, our deepest condolences to your family. And thank you so much for still going on live here, because I saw it for a lot of people would probably cancel it. Yeah, so
Uh,
challenging.
yeah, for my mother, what was really important was she was very proud that her children, where I have two sisters, that what we were doing was sort of sharing our knowledge, our skills with the wider community, with the wider world. And I think she would have wanted me to carry on with this webinar. So, in her memory, of course, what better thing to do?
Thank you so much. And talking about sharing knowledge, we all know that worldwide we have a quite major issue about the digital divide. We're 2.6 billion population, about 1/3 people, they don't have access to the internet. So if we want to provide more like remote, like surgery collaboration between the world's most developed countries, say in the UK and other part of the world,
Yeah.
so there must be very stable internet access in place. So how can we address that? Let's say if we can share this knowledge and provide more trainings or collaboration like you did,
Sure.
with Brazil, which is like 5,000 miles away from each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the future.
Christina, I mean, it's a really important point that you've picked up on there. And I've spoken about this a number of times before. I think for me, the largest challenge that we have as a human race is the ongoing asymmetries that we see globally. And these are asymmetries of knowledge, asymmetries of resources, and asymmetries of opportunities. These are not new. They have been there for thousands of years. But whilst we've made huge progress in many fields, I mean, it's beautiful to see what humans have been able to achieve and what we've done as a race. We've not done as much as we should have in reducing these asymmetries. And I think that is something that we really have to focus on more. We've now got these tools, and I keep coming back to this, the tech that we're going to talk about, where we have the potential to make a huge difference to these asymmetries. But what is absolutely critical is that connectivity bit. We now have the potential for us to broadcast this webinar if we wanted across 8 billion people, but we need them to have robust internet connections to be able to get that. So I think one of the key focuses, and it indeed is a major focus for the UN and other institutions, is to make sure that everybody's connected on this planet. And we really need to push that. The asymmetries that we see in healthcare globally, and I'll come back to my field, again, yes, there are resource constraints. In some places, there are more resources than others, but knowledge, there is huge asymmetries of knowledge as well. And for me, in this day and age, that we should be able to address relatively easily, because most people that I know that have knowledge are very happy to share it. So it's not that people want to keep it to themselves. People want to share their knowledge. Institutions want to share their knowledge. We just need to develop the platforms to enable that to happen. And so I think that push really has to be there, whether it's 5G technologies that we push further, and there's a lot of work going, but this is something we really need to put emphasis on and have targets where we say, look, every person needs to have that degree of connection. It's key. I think for me, it's key not just in getting the information to them, but also to the prediction models that we're making at the moment. We need to have the data from every race, every corner of the world, to make those prediction models accurate enough and applicable to those people. So it's a two-way thing, and we really need to work on that.
I agree with you entirely, but it's really exciting to see that it is now possible to use virtual reality, augmented reality, and other frontier technology to allow this kind of remote collaboration, especially in the field of surgery and healthcare possible for the first time, perhaps.
Completely. I've been a surgeon for 25 years, and I have a large international practice. But what that meant was, for the past 20 years, it's meant people flying to the UK, me flying to many different parts of the world for seminars, teaching, operations, and so on and so forth. And there's only so much you can do with the physical travel. But now, and that's one of the big benefits that we had with COVID, the speed tracking of these technologies, there is that sharing can happen with so much ease now. So as we said, we really do need to harness this further and say, okay, this is great. How do we carry on raising this exponentially? The metaverse, and again, you have people that believe it's the next big thing, and there are people that say, oh, the metaverse is just a gimmick. Both are correct. They're both correct. In metaverse, again, like augmented reality, they're tools. And whether it becomes a gimmick or it becomes something that's hugely useful is how you use that tool. So for me, in my field, there is a big role that augmented reality and the metaverse can play in improving surgical standards, in sharing knowledge and doing surgeries across continents, as we have shown, as we have demonstrated. But then we need to structure the systems accordingly. So we have the tools now, but if we structure the systems accordingly, then the metaverse is going to be a huge success. If we don't use it for these purposes and we use it for, gimmicky purposes, then yeah, sure, it's a gimmick. So it's not the tool itself. Don't blame the tool. It's how you structure your thought and your systems to use those tools.
To follow on that, so how many years do you think it might be possible for metaverse to become more like a standard, like a tool for surgeons or medical professionals to collaborate remotely on standard procedures?
It's already, the current state of play is we're already much more advanced than most people think. We can virtually do a lot already. As I said, with these conjoint twin operations, we have used augmented reality. And so, we can already do a lot with it. When does it become much more routine practice? I think in the next 5 to 10 years, we will see a, huge explosion of this being used much more routinely.
So in the next 5-10 years,
Yeah,
metaverse-related healthcare practice will be more commonplace everywhere?
Everywhere, well, it depends on digital connectivity, but places that are digitally connected, yes.
That's really encouraging. So potentially we will widening the whole access of top medical, treatment of the world to pretty much everywhere as long as there is stable internet access and connection. Is that correct?
We can get them we can share the knowledge with people there, and there are people that in every corner want that knowledge, so that we can achieve. And I think that can happen. We'll see a lot more of that happening in the next 5 to 10 years. Whether we can then get the resources to those areas to get the standard up to the where we expect, that's a slightly bigger question for me, and I can't answer that with any degree of confidence whether that's going to happen. Humans are capable of big things, and humans often act in very stupid ways. So, I can't comment on that. But do we have the technology? Yes. Do we have the intellect? Yes. Are we going to do it? Let's see.
That's wonderful, because at ITU, we actually have a metaverse working group. So in case any of our audience would like to join, there are lots of opportunities. So feel free to contact us. And there is dedicated metaverse for healthcare working group. So I think it might be quite interesting to get you involved. I think that would be beautiful. Yeah.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. Yeah.
Yeah. And following on that, another really interesting area related to metaverse concepts is digital twin. So, I mean, you actually created like several different digital twins for the conjoined twins for their medical situation, for surgery, training, and also like collaboration purpose. And now more and more innovators in the digital twin space, they are looking at how to develop human digital twins to keep people healthy. So for example, there is a US-based startup called Twin Health. They created the whole body digital twin service to help patients to reverse type 2 diabetics with 72% success rate, which is quite impressive. And now they have secured 50 million US dollars funding to start to like fast track their developments. So my question is, do you think in the future, to even wider, the positive impact of metaverse and digital twin, we can start to use human digital twin paired with our physical health conditions, give it to everyone, who may want to use that to prevent them from even getting ill in the first place?
That's a laudable aim, Christina. Let's break it down. So just to be clear, what we did with the conjoined twins, we had augmented reality reconstruction of the conjoined twins, so you could see them in augmented reality. That's not quite the same as having a digital twin. It's essentially a 3D model of the twins that we manipulated. But what we have done is we have created digital twins for another type of surgery that we do, where it's craniofacial surgery, where you reshape the child's head with surgery. And what we're now able to do is do the operation, do the whole thing in silico first, and then share that with the parents, with the family, and then decide whether we want to go ahead with the real operation. So all healthcare is prediction medicine. Whenever a doctor says, we will do this, we'll prescribe you this medicine, we'll give you this operation, what they're doing is they're making predictions. How successful a treatment pathway is how good that predictive algorithm is. That's healthcare. It's always been like that. It's in fact, that's how the human brain works. We're all doing that all the time. It's just a tool of prediction. What the digital twins, and I'm really excited about this space, is what the digital twins allows us to do is you start making those predictions and seeing the effects of those predictions in silico on the computer screen first, and you're not doing those experimentations and tests on humans. Now, how well the digital twin works to the human that it's twinned with depends on, how accurate the representation is of that predictive model that you've created for that human. I think it's going to, with the models that we made at the moment are reasonable, but with machine learning and when quantum computing, for example, comes online, I think those digital twins will be a lot more accurate. And we're already seeing, as you've given us an example, of these being useful in a healthcare space. I suspect we'll see much more of this in the next 10, 20 years. And I think it's, great space. What do we need to do? Again, I go back to these digital twins. The information that we collect, the data that we collect to make these twins has to come from a very wide source. It can't just be European data or North American data or Chinese data. For it to cater to the global audience, the data has to come from the global audience. Otherwise, we introduce all the biases into our models that we humans have. We have our biases, we all do. And that distorts our prediction models. And if we introduce those biases in our digital twins as well, they will give you the more accurate answers for some people, less accurate answers for other people. And that we need to be careful about when we're talking about the global asymmetries. It needs to be equitable.
That's wonderful. We have about like maybe another 10 minutes to take some questions from the audience. So if you have any questions for our amazing surgeon, free to put them in the Q&A box so we can read it and pose it to our VIP speaker today. And before that, let me ask you another question. You mentioned about quantum computing and potentially AI's impact on the future of our healthcare. So how do you see that going to develop to enhance your capabilities in the future?
Yeah. So I mean, as I said, all healthcare is predictive medicine. What you're doing is you're taking the data that you have and the experience that you have, and then you're making these predictions of what the right course of treatment is for a particular case, for a particular child patient. What artificial intelligence allows you to do is essentially say, okay, fine, up until now, you're doing all of this work essentially in your mind, the doctor, and you're consulting with your other colleagues, but now you're able to process a whole lot more data to try and get to better prediction algorithms. That's what artificial intelligence is going to help you with. We're doing it as we speak. We're collecting a lot more data. We are processing a lot more data, and then we're using this data to help us make better predictions in terms of how you treat people and how you manage diseases. Quantum computing is, again, that's one step further out, where the computational power healthcare there's a huge amount of data. And at the moment, whilst we are trying to process it, our computers perhaps aren't equipped, don't have the capacity to really dive as deep as we need to really get the nuances sorted. And the hope is that, and the technology is not there yet, but, the hope is that when quantum computing becomes more mainstream and we are able to bring it into the healthcare space more, I mean, it's starting to happen, then we'll be able to handle much larger quantities of data, which hopefully will make our prediction algorithms much, much more accurate. So that's the gist of it. But it's not anything new. This is what we've always been doing. It's all predictions. How do we make our predictions better? Reduce your biases, make the predictions more accurate.
That's interesting. I think one of the questions from the audience is, are there any gaps, limitation of technology for which you are looking for solutions now?
Yeah. So for me, a big question that always comes up is the data that we put in, the healthcare data that we put into our tech platforms. How accurate is that data? How granular is the data that we put in? Because, once the data is in, yes, machine learning can pick it up and process it, and, quantum computing in the future can process it. But how accurate is what we're putting into these models? Is that our interpretation of the data, or is that the raw data itself? And that remains a moot point for me. And it's something that, perhaps we need to put a bit more emphasis on, is that data collection is done in an as unbiased fashion as possible.
Yeah, I see. Interesting. And another audience is asking, there are many faculty management like solutions. To what extent will the digital twin or metaverse to improve the optimization of hospital operation management?
I mean, the short answer is it will improve. It will help. How much? It's difficult to it's difficult to be precise about how much, but there is no doubt in my mind that it is going to improve to a large extent. If I may take a slightly sort of around a route to this, I've I often get asked, what the right answer is to a problem. Should we use this technology? Should we not use this technology? Which technology do we back? And most of the time, I don't know. I don't know what the right answer is. But over the past few days, I have been reflecting, and I just like to share something with you. I think, You know, the most pure example of humanity that we have in our world is a mother's love for her child. Okay? So when a child is born, the mother does not know what that child is going to do in their life, what that child is going to become, what he or she may do. They don't know that. But what the mother does know is that if you instill compassion, if you instill love, diligence, honesty, integrity into that child, then you set them on the right path, and the chances are that they will arrive at the right answer. So as humans, most of the time, we don't know what the right answer is. You know, like I said, when you ask, oh, is this technology? Often you don't know what the right answer is, but you do know what the right path is. And if you stick to the right path, you will arrive at the right answers. Which technologies do you support and push? The technologies that reduce global asymmetries, support them. Technologies that are going to accentuate global asymmetries, you know, less interested in those. So whilst you don't know what the right answer is, we do, all of us, we do know what the right path is. And that is what we need to stick to.
I agree entirely. And also, the next question is from Craig Mayer. I think he's from South Africa. And he's asking, what are the advantages of 5G and 6G speed in telemedicine? Is very high speed connectivity necessary, and why?
Yes, it is necessary, no. Useful, yes. So we already have connection speeds in the areas where we're connected, even with sort of, you know, I would go as far as saying sort of 2G, 3G networks, where we can get data information to people. So that's the first big thing. One of the largest improvements in global surgical care that we've seen is the WHO surgical checklist, right? It does not need 5G. As long as you've got 2G, you can circulate, you know, I mean, we could post it, but you can just circulate that information to the global audience relatively easily with low bandwidth networks. So information sharing does not require high bandwidth. You can do it with lower bandwidth. So that's the first thing. Where 5G, 6G really comes into play is if you have surgeons in some places and surgeries happening in other areas, and you need that speed of feedback and communication, then yes, you need those high bandwidth networks for that. But you know, that for me is the cutting edge. We need to do a lot of work. You know, there's a huge amount of efficiency and improvement we can make and need to make before we get to making that sort of, you know, final sort of 20%, 30% further improvement. So we already have the technology and the networks to make a huge difference now. Yes, 5G is going to help, but don't wait for 5G to come. You know, there's a lot we can do before.
Wonderful. Next question is from Freddie Quack, and he's from London in the UK. So how do you see professionals as well as citizens collaborating on solutions as a way to join up the ecosystem, especially when it comes to sharing information and data? So currently, unless you are part of a club of professionals, not sure what is the mechanism for laymen who are not professionally trained to get involved and want to help?
That's a beautiful question. Thank you very much for that. An excellent question. Okay. So I'll give a personal example. When we set up our charity, Gemini Untwined, we set out to help 2 children. And then in turn, it became a few more children. So we said, okay, this is the task. This is where we need to get to. What became very clear is that we needed to set up a global repository of information. So whatever knowledge we have in this particular area globally, we wanted to bring that in, collate that, and then we can share that with the wider audience. And then we said, okay, which tools are going to help us with that? So that we've done for a very small niche area where the numbers are small, and it was relatively straightforward to say, okay, there's only so many cases that happen, and this is how we would share the knowledge. How do you do it for a bigger audience, and how do lay people get involved? For me, it is task driven. So I think organizations, rather than saying, you know, let us take global cataract, because there's a lot of work that's been done in the cataract world, a much more common problem, and say, okay, how do we crack this problem? How do we stop people from going blind because of something that's so easily solvable? Okay, so you get the problem, and then you say, okay, you create a system around it where people can come and collaborate with that to solve one particular problem. I don't know if that gives a clear answer, but it is, you get the problem and everybody can just focus around and make that happen. And that's with Gemini, augmented reality came from a different source that we did. You know, the modeling came from a different source, but we just got these solutions to try and help with the problem. So focus on the problem that you need to solve.
Wonderful. The next question is from Pingling Lao. And this person is asking, do you think the future that we might see immersive technologies in metaverse being used for drug discoveries or ATMP developments? So will there be a possibilities to partially migrating clinical trials and digital therapeutical applications to the metaverse?
Yes, I think there is definitely a role for that. I can see that happen. I think one of the big issues with the data collections, as we've discussed, it's having the global platform and having the global systems where that data sharing can be, quite streamlined across borders. And that is a major issue for us still. But once we make more progress with that and data sharing can be more seamless, I think using systems like the metaverse, where that data is collated and those trials are, the data is put into those trials and further progress is made, I can see that as a really good forum where that happens. But the challenge remains, I think data sharing is we need to crack the problem of data sharing and how we do that in a ethical, legal fashion before the metaverse is going to become useful in that domain. So the challenge is that there's a bigger challenge before we get there.
Okay, we are pretty much running out of time. So my last question today is, as a world leader in this specialized field, so what advice would you give to the next generation of medical professionals regarding incorporating digital technologies into their practice?
Okay. So my advice would be, and I've already answered that, focus on a problem that you're trying to solve. And we're all human. There's a lot of human energy. So for example, for craniopagus twins, we focused on 2 children. We said, what do we need to do to help these 2 children? What logistical structures do we need to put in place? What technologies, what tools do we need to use? And then we are fortunate enough to live in a world where we have these technologies. So then we looked around. I didn't know much about augmented reality, but there were people around me that had much more experience. So we got them on board, made them part of our team, shared our vision with them and said, this is the problem, can you help? We looked at the 3D modeling world. And again, so there is expertise around you. If you focus on the problem and then have the sort of openness of mind to say, okay, what more tools can I use from around and what people do I need to get into my ecosystem to help deliver the solution? That is, I think, how we make progress.
Thank you. Sorry, I just see another question coming up from Beko Wakili from Nigeria. So he's asking, considering logistic challenge, is it possible to carry out such complicated operation of conjoined twins remotely without the doctors and the patients in the same location?
At the moment, no. 20, 30 years time, possible. At the moment, what we are able to do and what we really focus on is when we refer a set of conjoined twins from a country, what we really like to do is to see if we can do the surgery in their country. So if we feel the infrastructure will allow for us to do the surgery in the home country, then that is the best way of us sharing our knowledge with the local healthcare teams, and then as necessary, going and supporting with the surgery. So the surgery happens in the home country. That is how we knowledge share. If we feel the infrastructure is not up to speed and the kids will be compromised doing the surgeries in the home country, then you would bring the kids to the UK. I don't think we're quite there yet. And as I said, perhaps in 20, 30 years where you could do this remotely, something as complicated as this.
Are you happy to answer the last question? I think another person put another one. If we spare a few more minutes, if Christina is happy with me. Yeah, I think it's yes. Okay, let me quickly do that. So this one is from Alan, and he's saying AI is doing amazing work in healthcare. So one of the big challenge which hinder this situation is some of the regions are a lack of infrastructure. So as an expert, what can you advise for this issue? What can be done with entities in place for spreading the amazing AI healthcare program?
Sorry, so if I understand the question correctly, it is lack of expertise in certain geographic
I think it's about lack of IT infrastructure in some places of the world. Yeah.
You know, like we said, this is a major challenge that needs to be rectified. What can we do about it? I think we need to ask the network experts how we deliver that further. But as a clinician, what I can say is we need it. It needs to happen.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me pass on back to Christina. And thank you so much, Doctor, for joining us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Once again, I really would like to wrap up by thanking our wonderful moderator and Professor Jeelani for this very insightful, engaging, and dynamic conversation. I think we have all learned a lot today. And thank you so much also to our audience for your attendance, but also for your active participation. As we have seen, there have been many questions, and I think that this first fireside chat actually has been really great, giving us the opportunity to learn from Professor Jeelani, and most importantly, actually to use this platform once again to recall everyone that technology has to be used for good. So we encourage all of you also to continue to stay in touch with us with the Digital Transformation Dialogues. We are going to have a next event that will take place actually on the 29th of January, and will be dedicated this time to another very interesting topic that will be buildings in action, the intersection of digital transformation and sustainability. And we're going to have an Ask the Expert session on digital twin for smart cities that will take place on the 30th of January. So keep an eye on the ITU website over the next months to see information on all other upcoming discussions on AI, digital transformation, banking. So I think that we really have great opportunity to delve into new and exciting developments in the digital transformation space. So I would like to thank you once again for your participation, for your contribution to this fireside chat, which is officially concluded. And once again, my sincere special thanks to Professor Jeelani, because it has been, you know, an honor for the ITU to have you as our special guest today. Thank you, everyone.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.